I've ridden 107 coasters worldwide as of the start of 2025, and I thought, why not? I'd show my 50 favourites to you all with this ranking video. It's kind of different to something I've done before. I've done, did a thought part ranking a few years ago, my top 15 rides, but I've never done something, with including everything in my coaster count. So there's going to span over two parts because it's going to be a big one with 50 rides. It's 50 coasters. I don't really want to make people watch me talk about and probably be here for about 50 minutes. So I'm going to split it into two parts. Today's going to be the first 25, and then next week, this Friday coming up will be the top 25. So this is a ranking. Of course, everything is my opinion. So of course, my opinion. So just be respectful of that and have a bit of fun with it. Let me know some of your favorite coasters down in the comments below on this video or in part 2 as well. But I'm going to stop rambling about all this sort of stuff. I'm going to get straight into the ranking. Number 50, Pony Express, Knott's Berry Farm, Zamperla. I've never ridden any of Vekoma's boosted bike models, so the Zamperla motor coaster was actually probably my first taste of anything like that. I was throwing from my back when I saw these trains had the same restraints as the disco coasters, but to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised how comfortable these trains actually were. Theming is not exactly this coaster's strong suit, although the train design for the ponies were actually fantastic. Layout-wise, however, this coaster is it's definitely on the short side, but manages to still be fun and unique in comparison to other things that I've ridden around the world. Anyway, the 38 miles per hour launch is a nice little start to layout, followed by an overbank and a hill just coming over the station and that launch track. An attempt at some sort of twisted airtime hill comes before the best element of the ride, which is a fairly whippy bank turn into a tunnel that hangs above the Parked River Rapids ride. It travels through this tunnel with some really decent speed before coming back out again and raising up into a hill containing the brake run. The ride total time is only about 35 seconds, but it does make the most of that time with a few fun elements. And I'd love to see a few more of these Zamperla coasters around the world. I'd love to be able to get one here in the UK maybe, just to really see what that model can do with a longer layout. Number 49, Fluff Choco Chip Creek, Energylandia, Vekoma. Energylandia is now the home of one of Vekoma, it seems, and their new for 2024 coaster continues that trend of bringing some great Vekomas to Poland's top theme park. In terms of creating a themed experience from the moment you step into the queue, this is probably actually the best to do at Energylandia, maybe apart from their incredible Into and Mega Coaster, which we'll talk about in Friday's video. The cartoonish vibes of the Sweet Valley area throw brilliant into the coaster's queue line and into that station building as well. Although the on-ride theming wasn't actually done when I visited, it may be done now, I'm not sure, but if it isn't done, it's going to look amazing when it's finally done. I saw actually nothing of the layout before I visited the park as well, so it was kind of much of a surprise when I rode it for the first time. I'm not really going to go through each element, I'm not going to go through the layout element by element because it's just so long. It doesn't really have any standouts, but it does have 3 lift hills, carries its speed really nicely in the twists and turns, and some decent positives considering it's a family coaster on, so those tighter helixes towards the end as well. The lift hills have a small little hump pre-drop section that feel like could give a nice pop of airtime if you sit towards the back of the train. But overall, Fluff Choco Chip Creek is a fantastic addition to Energylandia's lineup and adds another coaster for the whole family. And hopefully when I return to the park in a few years, the on-ride theming is looking so much better. Number 48, Matterhorn Bobsleds, Disneyland, Arrow Development. The oldest coaster by far on the list is 1959's Matterhorn Bobsleds at the original Disney Park in California. This coaster is split into two sides, so 2 different creds, but for the sake of this list, I'm going to group them together as there isn't really too much difference between the layouts. For a start, the presentation of the coaster is absolutely fantastic. It holds a massive presence on that skyline in the park. You can see it from pretty much anywhere, especially in Main Street. It looks great, and it's kept super mysterious, and those cold wind sound effects that kind of play around as you enter the area or in the queue really adds to that atmosphere. And this, I believe, is one of the only coasters I've ridden by the old Arrow Developments before they moved to Aerodynamics. But moving on to the actual coaster's layouts, I'm going to bunch them together just a lot easier, to be honest. They both start by boarding the slightly awkward but somehow charmful ride vehicles. You're then sent into a small pre-drop section before climbing the surprisingly steep lift hill, and you begin to spiral around the mountain, and you're greeted by the Yeti animatronic located inside of the attraction. The ride is full of more janky twists and turns before the track reaches a splashdown, and that's kind of part of the break one, which is actually a really good surprise because I didn't expect that to be there. A nice sunny Californian day, it was great to get a little bit wet just to try and cool down a little bit. As I said, there isn't really too much difference between either side, but if I had to choose, I'd probably say the Tomorrowland side is marginally better. Overall, though, I absolutely love this classic pair of coasters, and they were thoroughly enjoyable. They were full of charm, and if I get back to California again in a few years' time, hopefully they're still running. Number 47, the Flight of the Pterosaur, Paulson's Park, Vekoma. Time for my second and definitely not the last Vekoma coaster on the list. Paulson's Park invested in 2 Vekomas when they opened the Lost Kingdom in 2016, and one of those, of course, included the manufacturer's brilliant FFC model. The entirety of the Lost Kingdom is such a great showcase of what Portland can do with their theming, and Flight of the Pterosaur is by far the best attraction in that area. I've always been a massive fan of how Pterosaur looks around the area and how it glides over the area with some sort of elegance. And the queue line in the station features some really good rock work, and there's actually some great interactions with the scenery towards the end of the layout as well on ride. Before that, however, you need to, of course, board and fly through the first half of the coaster. So you take your seat on your extremely comfortable trains featuring that lovely Vekoma lap bar on these FFC models. And once you've dispatched, you climb the 65-foot tall lift hill and then begin to soar over the Lost Kingdom with a couple of nice drops to help the build up a little bit of speed. After a turnaround, as the coaster begins to move towards the back of the air, however, is when the coaster hits its best element. The train builds up as it lowers into a decently intense helix, hugging the rockwork, and it flies back into the station. And I'm planning to get back to Porton Tissue and Ghostly Manor tries out, so I'm also very excited to get back on this brilliant family Vekoma coaster. Number 46, 13, Alton Towers, Intamin. The first Alton Towers coaster to make it on the list is the first of those unique Intamin models that has developed massively over the last 10 years, and of course, I'm talking about the multi-dimension coaster. 13 is located deep inside the dark forest area of the park, and the entire layout is shrouded by trees surrounding that ride area. The queue line, to be honest, it's fairly barren in terms of scenery apart from the trees, but the excellent theming Merlin can produce is shown within the short indoor section of the queue, of course, with that electric Cylon that everyone absolutely loves, and of course the ride station as well. I've always been a huge fan of the aesthetic of the crypt and the dark forest. Some lovely audio paired along with it makes for a very creepy ride station. Dispatch audio is also great as well, as you know your train's excellent into the unknown. The layout starts with an unbanked turnaround before entering the 65-foot tire lift hill. You get a nice little glimpse of the layout before barreling down a trim drop that gives some decent airtime towards the back of the train before passing past the ride photo camera into a bank turn to the right as the track passes over the bottom of the first drop. Multiple Intamin style dips follow suit before the main event of the attraction. Just as a pre-warning, if you haven't experienced 13 yet and don't know what's coming, I strongly recommend you skip to this timestamp that's popping up on the screen now, because it's so much better if you have no idea what's coming. The train pulls into a very dark room with scaffolding and crypt scenery surrounding the track, and it also comes to a dead end. The small lights then begin to flicker and then cut out completely as the train drops a few feet. That's not the last of the drops, however. As the train drops about 15 feet, the lights come back on to reveal a wraith in front of the ride vehicle. The train is then put into reverse and you're sent spiraling up a helix in complete darkness, and you then see the light and glide into the coaster switch track before a brief launch with a little bit of kick to it that propels the ride vehicle back into the brake run and eventually the station. To be honest, 13 for the most part was an absolute marketing disaster for Alton Towers, how they hyped it up as be the scariest ride ever, but Merlin keep doing that, and to be honest, we're not really surprised anymore. However, I do absolutely love and enjoy this Intamin prototype, and I still sit here and think how much better it could be if that drop just wasn't trimmed. Number 45, RMF Dragon, Energylandia, Vekoma. Coming just two places above Flight of the Pterosaur, Energylandia's Vekoma FFC, RMF Dragon is obviously just marginally better than R1 here in the UK. As in true Energylandia fashion, the queue line's insanely long to walk around, but there are a couple of nice pieces of scenery dotted around, especially in the little indoor section. It's in that part of Energylandia, though, where the theme does look a little bit off for some reason. It's probably because it was built towards the start of the park's early life. But once you enter the station, the theming stays relatively the same, and then you board your extremely comfortable Vekoma trains with a lovely nice lap bar, and then send up the 65-foot lift hill. Here then comes the single best part of the coaster, and the reason why it's probably where it is on the list. The first drop caught me off guard massively, and that overbank going across the water is fantastic. The ride then has a series of small helixes and turns to get itself back in towards the ride station. It even includes a lovely little station flyer as well, which is always welcome. RMF Dragon is actually a cloned layout as well. I'm not 100% sure if this is the first version of the layout, but it's 100% the coaster that's carried by that drop and outer bank turn. But there's some still great fun moments, and I absolutely love anything new from New Generation Vekoma. Number 44, Vampire, Chessington World of Adventures, Aerodynamics. I seem to be honest have quite a love-hate relationship with Chessington's vintage attraction, but there's still so much to enjoy with this aerodynamic suspended coaster. This originally started off with the original swinging suspended trains with the floors. This can still be found a few hours around the world now, but in 2002 Vekoma came in and added those floorless trains to improve the ride experience, and this of course is how I've always known the ride. Theming wise, this coaster used to be a lot better, but gradually it's gotten worse in 30 plus years of operation. There's still some really nice little bits of scenery in the queue, but overall it's not too great. The station, however, is boosted by its incredible soundtrack blasting out as trains are being dispatched constantly. One positive of this coaster is, of course, it has an impressively long layout, so when you queue a long while for it on those busy summer days at Chessington, you feel like you are getting your value for the time that you spent queuing. The first half of the layout sees the train swinging and gliding over the queue with a few turns that give a really good swing on the train, which just adds a little bit more to the layout. There is one rough patch as the train comes to a path leading out of the area that always manages to wreck my back, but then the train travels up its second lift hill as it prepares to soar over the main plaza of the Wildwoods, Transylvania area, whatever you want to call it. This second drop straight off the lift hill is great for a brief moment until it starts to level itself out again. Slowly starts preparing you for the best part of the ride, gliding over just where the entrance of the queue is. And that drop into the tunnel is so good wherever you sit. But like the majority of the coaster, it's so much better towards the back. The trains swing really high at the bottom as well, which adds a little bit more intensity to it. It's great. And after a final rise up and then dip back down again, you go and swing it straight into the brakes. There's definitely a few rough patches and a few dead spots on Vampire's layout, but the nostalgia mixed with a great couple of elements means it will take up the number 44 spot on my list. Number 43, Crush's Coaster, Walt Disney Studios Park, Maura. Crush's Coaster is a ride that I haven't actually ridden since 2016, but from what I remember, it was pretty fun. I had a really nice facade mixing the studio stage backdrop with a nice ocean Finding Nemo theme as well, and that theme does continue on into the station. Layout wise, I can't really accurately cover it too well, to be honest. With it being an indoor coaster, there's not actually too many photos that exist online of it with the house lights on. From memory, however, it consists of the usual Maura elements, that being a traditionally high bank turn, some decently sized drops, and plenty of spin, of course. And the Finding Nemo show effects and scenery really add to the experience and make it a complete package of a coaster, which, to be honest, we've all come to expect from Disney by now. Number 42, Stampeder, Roja, Portaventura Park, Custom Coasters International. The first wooden coaster on my list is the only side of Stampeder I got to ride at Portaventura, and that was, of course, the red side. I'm not going to say it in Spanish again. I'm scared I've messed that one up already. But this is located in the western area of the park, although you wouldn't know that by the lack of theming on this coaster, to be honest. I know wooden coasters are a fairly difficult one to theme, and this is a pre-2000s coaster, but there isn't really anything appealing to look at off-ride apart from the trains, racing around that circuit with each other. Once you pick your side and head up the stairs to the station, you board the CCI trains, which I really don't like. I don't know, I haven't really started this one too positively here, but trust me, it does get better. The trains then both dispatch in unison with each other and climb up their respective 84-foot chain lift hills. I was actually caught off guard when the trains began racing. It picked up a lot of speed, a lot quicker than I thought, and I was sitting on that back row as well on the red side, of course, so I was getting pulled through this layout. The layout, for the most part, was very traditional for an older Woody, especially, CCI around that sort of time that they do make it, around, the 1990s. Consists of some airtime hills and throwing you around. This coaster is definitely not too smooth, but upon reflection I can say that I definitely enjoyed what it had to offer, and the roughness was kind of why there's some great interactions around the area and some airtime hills as well, and the coasters are long ones too, which is always welcome for me. Number 41, Dragon's Fury, Chessington World of Adventures, Maura. The other Maura coaster on my list is another one of Chessington's trademark attraction, Dragon's Fury. This Maura spinner is not only my favourite Maura coaster, but nearly my favourite attraction at Chessington World of Adventures. The ride from a theme standpoint has basically nothing apart from that talking dragon outside the queue entrance, but as long as I'm not wasting 2 hours on a busy hot summer's day, I can look past it. The layout purely is where this coaster shines though, and features some really varied and fun elements with some varied forces. Once you board either facing forwards or backwards, you're sent up the incredibly loud 50-foot lift hill before you're whipped down the surprisingly intense first drop and straight into that traditional Maura overbank. This is followed by the first block section of the ride, and thankfully it takes off no speed at all. Another small drop adjacent to the path sees you fly up into another brake run before another good 1-2 punch. A fairly intense helix followed by a decent airtime hill brings the ride vehicle to another block break and strong helix just before hitting the ride's very small second lift hill. This acts, to be honest, more as a booster lift hill just so those trains have enough speed to get through the final couple elements. The little switchbacks just other than give a nice few laterals before you hit a final stronger switchback, which is another surprisingly intense element. You then fly into the brakes and rotate back into the station where you can unload. Dragon's Fury may not be an amazing themed experience like Crush's Coaster a few spots earlier, but its layout is a fun and varied one. It's definitely my second best spinning coaster that I've done. From Maura. Number 40, Revolution, Pleasure Beach Resort, Aerodynamics. The Pleasure Beach Resort in Blackpool is home to many classic coasters, and out of the ones that I've ridden, Revolution is probably the best. A very simple layout for this 1979 Arrow launch looper, but wow does it execute it well. After climbing the queue line stage, you board your classic Arrow train, and you can just look ahead to see that track drop into that vertical loop. I'll be honest, I wasn't really expecting much from this coaster, but when that winch launch activated and the train dropped into that loop, I realised that this coaster wasn't going to be as average as I initially expected. The train enters that vertical loop with a lot of speed, a lot of power, and pulls some great force. You then go up into a hill and level out to where the best section of the ride does begin. The train comes to a complete stop momentarily, and then you're pulled backwards through the loop where the ride pulls some great positives before flying back up into that ride station. By absolutely no means a long ride, but Revolution executes its only elements so well that I can't put this one any lower. Number 39, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Dynamic Attractions. Disneyland's second or third coaster on my list, depending on how you look at it, is their version of Big Thunder Mountain. This one's manufactured by Dynamic Attractions, who have only ever manufactured 3 other coasters worldwide. As all of you probably know, in regards to these big Thunder Mountain coasters, the theming is really what makes these coasters across all the Disney parks across all three continents, and this is absolutely no different. Layout wise, the coaster's okay, but it doesn't really have any standout moments, unfortunately. It seems to lose its speed quite quickly, and there are a few hills that look, they might give you a pop of air time, but then there's just nothing. The reason this coaster is high above other rides is that I consider, the other rides probably below this actually probably have a better layout, but of course the theming is absolutely, I'm speechless trying to think about it. It's absolutely incredible. The way the trains interact with all the incredible work around the ride makes you feel like you're immersed in that world. And the third lift hill is also a major highlight with all them special effects. And I feel like the train does slightly tilt a little bit. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe someone can clarify that for me. Of course, all the explosions. The final third is fantastic. The train's also very comfortable, and there are a rare chance that the ride vehicles will interact with and pass each other in different sections, and it just makes it so much more appealing to stand and watch from those paths. Number 38, Uncharted, PortAventura Park, Intamin. PortAventura's most recent coaster edition in 2023 adopted the brand of the popular video game Uncharted. I'm not someone who's really played those games yet, to be honest, but I'm still really excited to try out this Intamin multi-dimension coaster in its opening year because I saw nothing of this attraction online. The result, to be honest, is a bit of a strange one, with the coaster being one of the best in Europe in one department and painfully average in the other. I'll start with the queue line. Absolutely unbelievable. The facade at the front looks incredible with all that rock work, and all the queue inside is so detailed and immersive, and it helps it is indoors in nice and sunny Spain. And the queue basically is split into two parts. That also caught me off guard, and the temple theming was so good just before the ride station. Once you board the comfortable and modern Intamin train, you're sent off on your adventure. This is where the incredible stuff comes to an end, sadly. Once you enter the main show building, although it's dark, you can clearly see other trains that are further along the layout moving around. This just kind of ruins that immersion of the ride. The layout itself is a fun little indoor layout featuring a few nice launches and a very good backwards drop. The animation on the screens also just kind of, something just looked off about them. I do hope there's something that PortAventura do get to improving in the years to come. Although, I can't help but PortAventura just missed the chance to have a world-class dark ride in their park. But they nailed the first part, but the presentation inside the main show building is really what lets this coaster down. Number 37, Mandrill Mayhem, Chesington World of Adventures, Bolliger and Mabillard. Another new for 2023 coaster pops up on the list next, and we're coming back home to Chesington World Adventures to find it. I was very excited when I heard that a new B&M coaster would be coming to the UK in 2023, and I don't really think anyone expected this park to get themselves a B&M. But in typical Merlin fashion, this holds a really strange world first record title, and that is being that it's the world's first launched boomerang wing coaster. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know. I do have a love-hate relationship with our other wing coaster here in the UK, as you'll find out later in the list in the episode on Friday. And one of my two problems with Mandrill Mayhem is the same for that wing coaster. I'll start with positives, however. For a start, the layout is so much fun, and I can probably pick out quite a few elements that I'm a huge fan of. While only being 45 miles per hour, that multi-pass launch has some amazing kick to it. The inline twist going over the entrance sign of the area has some great hang times, a great photo opportunity off-ride as well. Lastly, the backward-facing seat really boosts the ride experience massively, adds some more intensity to the layout, including that little junior scorpion tail right at the start, basically adding another inversion, which is great. Circling back to those negatives, however, I've not really been a fan of B&M's vest collar restraints and do find them incredibly uncomfortable. The second downside of the attraction is in about 18 months of operating, it has developed a pretty bad rattle, which unfortunately seems to be a huge problem for B&M's projects at the moment. It seems to be getting worse and worse every single time I ride it, and it's almost getting to a point where it majorly affects the ride experience on the back two rows, especially on the outside wing seats. I do love the theme and the presentation of the coaster though, so it's a shame that the ride experience is being affected by a rattle problem so soon after opening. But Mandrill Mayhem, it's still a good ride and is certainly another unique attraction for a Merlin park. Number 36, Colossus, Thorpe Park, Intamin. Colossus, the coaster that kickstarted the journey at Thorpe Park would begin to become the park that they are now. I'm actually quite a big fan of the Intamin 10 inversion coaster layout, and this of course is the original one, but Colossus has an outstanding flaw that I'm pretty sure most enthusiasts have picked up on over the years, and that's that the coaster is just so uncomfortably rough towards the back of the train. I personally don't think it rides too bad towards the front of the train in an odd numbered row, and if you ride an even numbered row, then good luck having any leg room. And also if you sit towards the back of the train in any row, then your ears just get bashed about so much. It's really, really uncomfortable though. But as I said, I do like the layout of this coaster. The vertical loop pulls some really good positives if you come into it. The airtime hill doesn't give any airtime, but it's still a really fun hill to glide over with some speed. The corkscrews are whippy, and the quadruple barrows are really, really fun. The cobra roll definitely can be uncomfortable, and that final barrow is also very intense and actually quite powerful. Combined with those terrible restraints, it's not exactly a great mix. I do find it really uncomfortable, but everyone's been saying that Colossus needs those lap bar trains from Intamin, and the ride will be so much better with those, I think, as proved by Sick at Flamingo Land, which I still need to ride, but it's got a really, really good public reception. But instead of adding new trains, Thorpe had decided to retrack and repaint the coaster, which visually makes it look a lot fresher, but it doesn't seem to ride any better. Who knows, maybe once the retracking and repainting is completed, these new trains will be added to just revitalise Colossus again. Number 35, Space Mountain, Disneyland, Dynamic Attractions. Disneyland Space Mountain was the first ride I did when I walked into the Anaheim Resort last year, and it was a great way to start my trip in the USA. This was my first taste of Space Mountain's original theme, because a certain Vekoma in Paris doesn't really count. And I can't say that I prefer it to that certain Vekoma's theme, which may just be a little bit of Star Wars bias. As I said though, this indoor coaster was still a blast. Indoor coasters in the UK are not actually our strong suit, sadly, so experiencing one like this makes me just really want something similar back in our country again. As standard with Disney, the theme is immaculate, and I do always love a sci-fi aesthetic. The trains are probably not the most comfortable thing ever, but they did open in 1977, so I can cut it a bit of slack. The 3 lift hill sections really help build up the suspense, and then you're released and gravity takes control. The layout itself isn't exactly anything unique, but it does excel in making the coaster actually feel a lot faster than it actually is. The layout does actually really just consist of a lot of untrimmed brake sections and bank turns to the left and right, which give way more naturals than I expected. As I said, the sense of speed is probably what the ride does best, and combined with all those screens and special effects, along with an amazing soundtrack composed by Michael Giacchino, it really makes for a great indoor coaster that you can re-ride over and over again. Number 34, Rita, Alton Towers, Intamin. Having Rita this high might be a bit of a controversial pick, but I'm not really so sure. Enthusiasts don't really rate Rita too highly, and for good reason if you're comparing this to some of the other incredible Intamin accelerators that have been built over the last 20 years. Similar to 13, which was earlier on in the video, I really like the aesthetic of the dark forest area of the park. It's not by any means the best theme man's ever done, but it's mysterious, it's cool, and it's creepy, and I think Rita was repurposed really well to fit that area. The station is very open, which is not really ideal in the case of poor weather in the UK, which happens a lot, but the operator cabin actually does look really, really good with the overgrown trees taking over that racetrack style building. The coaster instantly gets praise from me for having a hydraulic launch, because the 61 miles per hour launch is almost as punchy as the world's fastest accelerating coaster stealth at Thorpe Park. Although the ride then takes away some of those bonus points by having an awful turn to the right at the end of the launch trail, which absolutely butchers your ears on those over-the-shoulder restraints. Another great element comes soon after, the ride reaching its 68-foot peak and producing a great twisted airtime hill at speed that absolutely launches you out of your seat, especially if you're sat towards the back. This is followed by a bank down the left, which ultimately wraps underneath the previous airtime hill with another twisted airtime hill that gives another great pop of ejector, all before another high-speed bank turn to bring you towards the final 2 elements of ride, a fairly mediocre drawn-out hill that doesn't really give much airtime, another final little ejector hill into the brakes. Rita is incredibly short, clocking in with just 25 seconds of ride time, but like a lot of Intamin accelerators, make good use of that time with some good elements, even if they aren't as standout as the 200 and 300 foot monsters around the world. If you can look past some of the roughness towards the back, I think you can still get a lot of fun of Alton Towers' second fastest coaster. Number 33, Formula, Legolandia, Vekoma. Formula was the coaster that really put Vekoma back on the map, and to be honest I can see why. The layout was super fun and basically a perfect addition in a fairly compact plot of land, and we somehow haven't seen more of these compact launch Vekomas pop up yet. Theming wise, this coaster is very obviously themed to racing. Theming in 2016 was not exactly Legolandia's strong suits. This could be classed as more of a stylization rather than theming. But as the theme of the video so far, the layout is what propels the coaster to where it is on my list. Once you board your comfortable Vekoma trains, although they probably could do without the comfort collars, you're brought into a launch tunnel where the smoke effects begin and the tension builds. The train is then launched at a punchy 49 miles per hour into a sidewinder that just about has a right amount of speed to give some decent hang time. This is where the low to the ground ejector moments begin though. The train sharply banks to the left and wraps around to a fantastic ejector hill before a whippy corkscrew that sends the ride vehicle into a small tunnel. You exit this tunnel into a good wave turn that gives some weird sideways ejector before the third and final inversion, which is another corkscrew. The coaster then has a small overbank to the left, a great twisted airtime hill with some more good ejector, and a final airtime hill into the brakes. Similarly to Rita, Formula has a very short layout but makes the most of it with some good airtime moments and also adds some inversions into the mix. Despite the length of the shoot, it's hard to come off Formula and say you didn't have a great time on this lovely launch Vekoma. Number 32, Storm Chaser, Paultons Park, Mack Rides. Tornado Springs is by far the best theme land we have here in the UK, and the flagship coaster in the area is also the best the park currently has to offer. The entire queue line is absolutely beautiful and the immersion is incredible, and the ride station is fantastic too. I do sometimes struggle to think we have something like this in the UK, but I am so grateful for it. While unfortunately this isn't a Mack Extreme Spinner, this family thrill coaster can be absolutely thrilling on a good run. The layout starts with a turnaround to the right, and the ride vehicle begins to climb the 64-foot lift hill. Once reaching the top, the coaster brings itself down a small pre-drop over the area's entrance sign before a couple of smaller banked hills until it sends itself into the main drop. This layout is extremely tight and constantly wraps itself around the track and the rockwork located in the ride area. The free spinning really kicks in as the ride has a little turnaround to the right before flying you into the best moment of the ride, the helix. Regardless of where you sit, this helix is incredibly intense for a family coaster, but if you can find a good spin and different weather conditions, I think can pull some crazy positivity you just wouldn't expect from a family coaster like this. The coaster pulls up into a nicely banked turn to the left and then drops back down towards the ground for a final intense bank turn before hitting the brake run. Storm Chaser finds a perfect length for a family coaster considering the forces it can pull, combining theming with a low to the ground layout that is Paulton's best coaster today. With more exciting developments on the horizon, I'm really hoping that this one will lose its title in the coming years. Hopefully there's an RMC on the way. Number 31, Galactica, Alton Towers, Bolliger and Mabillard. Coming up next on my list is the prototype B&M flying coaster Galactica. This was formerly known as Air before a retheme in 2016, adding some virtual reality and a new sci-fi theme, but that virtual reality only lasted until 2019. Before my recent Towers trip in late 2024, I had a Galactica a lot lower in my rankings. The 4 rides I got on the coaster over the fireworks weekend, however, made me find a new love for this B&M. The theme is incredibly bare bones considering they had a second chance to add something a little bit more during the transition from Air to Galactica, but the portal and ride is the only thing really, but it is a really nice piece of theming with some really nice mist effects. You do start the ride experience though by boarding the vehicle like a traditional B&M invert with some added restraints to of course keep the rider secure. You're then moved into the flying position, which is still an incredibly odd sensation, never gets old every time I ride. As you climb to the top of the 65-foot lift hill, you look down to the ground below you as you begin to enter the pre-drop before banking to the right and dropping towards the portal where the train actually picks up some really good speed. You fly through the portal and enter the incredible fly-to-lie element, which is still one of my favourite parts of any coaster at Towers. Speeding around on your back, added with some surprisingly strong positives, make for another odd sensation on this coaster. After a slightly banked turnaround to the left, the coaster uses the lie to fly element to reposition you in the normal flying position you found yourself in before the fly to lie, if that makes sense. A raised turn to the right brings you to the second inversion of the layout, a good inline twist heading away from the queue into the final section of the coaster. This final section does feature some decent twists and hills with some good speed to make your way back into the brake run. Galactica certainly feels a little bit out of place since Nemesis Reborn opened and of course with Toxicator opening this year as well. But the layout is so much fun. I'd love to see it get some Nemesis style theming and treatment to make Forbidden Valley the real complete package. Number 30, Revenge of the Mummy, Universal Studios Hollywood, Premier Rides. Universal Studios Hollywood is not blessed with coasters unlike the Orlando Resort, but the best of these two here is their version of the Revenge of the Mummy, located in the lower section of the park. This coaster is located inside a massive show building that from the outside looks like a massive film soundstage. Inside, however, is an incredibly detailed queue. The theming continues to the ride station where you board the Premier Ride trains. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the restrictive nature of these trains. The lap bars just feel they feel like it'd be a little bit, I'm not sure how to explain it, but they feel a little bit restrictive and a little bit uncomfortable, unfortunately. But once you're dispatched, you're into the dark ride section of the coaster, which is fantastic and sets up the story really well. At the end of this section, you slowly roll into the first of 2 launches. This launch absolutely took my breath away. Considering it only hits about 40 miles per hour, it has a ridiculous amount of kick to it. This will send you into the main part of the show building, and the layout from here mainly consists of good airtime hills and strobe effects. You then rise into a dead end where the scarabs appear on the screen in front of you in the ride vehicle, and I believe there is effect where the scarab, like there'll be like basically pokers in the bottom of the seats. They weren't working when I went, but they are sometimes there. And after a short delay, the ride vehicle is shot backwards where you complete the next part of the layout backwards. Some more good airtime hills and effects follow before the train hits a turntable that brings the vehicle to a stop and you're spun around and brought back into the ride station. It's definitely the weaker of the 2 Revenge of the Mummy coasters. You'll find that out in part 2, but this version still provides some great moments and a lot of fun. Number 29, Speed, Energylandia, Intamin. Energylandia has a few coasters that tower over the skyline of the park, but none of them are quite as unique as Speed Water Coaster. Only 4 of these Intamin water coasters have been made worldwide, so they're still a hard model to come by. Speed follows a little pirate theme with some actual decent scenery and a nice ride station, for Energylandia standards anyway. The layout starts with the traditional water ride section with the boats very gently taking the river down to the elevator lift hill. This elevator lift hill is so imposing when you're looking up at it from the flume section. The ride vehicle soon connects with the elevator lift hill and begins to ascend all the way to the top. The peak of this unique element is 164 feet. And it feels incredibly high and you feel so exposed once you are up there. The elevator lift hill then connects with the track and the ride vehicle is released down the incredible first drop where it just keeps on picking up speed until it reaches 62 miles per hour and levels out into the first splashdown where you may get a bit wet at the back of the train. The train then comes up into a massive hill over the path. It looks like it might give some airtime, but in reality there's nothing. A nice bank turn to the left follows as the train comes into a straight bit of track before diving down into a fairly intense helix which pulls some good positives. You then drop down to the final splashdown, which slows the train down, and you will get wet wherever you sit. Speed is by no means a coaster that focuses on airtime, but despite its incredible height, drop, its speed and its splashdown elements make it a must ride for me on a very hot Poland last summer. Number 28, Big Thunder Mountain, Disneyland Paris, Vekoma. The second Big Thunder Mountain coaster on my list is the Paris version of the attraction, and it's almost better in every single way. The thing that makes this Big Thunder so unique to all the others is that the layout is actually placed on an island in the middle of the far west area. So you start your journey through the queue and into the station, which are all located on the main part of the themed area, and by usual Disney standards, these are incredible, much like the one in California. And then you board the train-themed ride vehicles, and the first surprise of the layout actually came straight away from me when the coaster just drops into a huge dark tunnel so much quicker than I expected, and you reach out into the island where the layout is located. And it starts an almost 4-minute experience twisting, turning, dropping, and interacting with the surroundings of Big Thunder Mountain. This layout is faster and more aggressive than the Anaheim version, which for me works in its favour. Through station again, the ride vehicle drops back into the tunnel again at the end of the layout with so much speed, probably more speed than the first time, giving the ride a thrilling finale in the dark. The ride is actually currently closed for refurbishment, but I can't wait for the day that this coaster comes back for the community, and I can't wait to get back out there and ride it again. Number 27, Incredicoaster, Disney California Adventure, Intamin. The biggest coaster at the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim is Incredicoaster, formerly known as California Screaming before a retheme to the popular Pixar film. I was excited for this one, and there are some great moments mixed with a few very painfully average parts. Unusually for Disney, the theming for this attraction is actually pretty poor. It dominates the Pixar Pier area, which for the most part is great with the theming. You know, rides like Toy Story Midway Mania look great, but this just doesn't really look like it had much thought put into it at all. The ride vehicles are also quite awkward, and considering they're actually from Intamin, I expected something slightly better. Once you're dispatched though, you complete a small pre-drop with some incredible scenery to the right, and then line up in the water for the coaster's 55 mph LIM launch. This launch has got a nice little kick to it with some great water effects accompanying the train's movement, and it brings you into the first of many tunnels that this coaster has surrounding the track. As you exit that first tunnel, you wrap around towards the exit of Pixar Pier and head back to the direction of the ride station, where the ride probably has its best moment. A smaller LIM boost upwards into a tunnel over 100 feet, and you get a great drop into a turnaround that brings you into the ride's only inversion. You have a small drop off to build up a little bit more speed, and then you enter the vertical loop, which of course is another highlight. Another turnaround underneath the previous track towards the exit follows before a couple of airtime hills that don't actually give any airtime, but I've heard if you sit towards the back you can get some good little pops of ejector as the train goes through. A quick block break before hitting the final helix of the ride makes for a really nice ending with some good speed. Incredicoaster is also one of the longest coasters on the planet, having a track length of 6,072 feet. It makes good use of this track length and has some great moments. I just wish I got to ride it a few more times on my trip to California so I could really feel the full potential and get some more airtime on this coaster. Number 26, Saw the Ride, Gerstlauer, Thorpe Park. The final coaster of part 1 is Saw the Ride, located at Thorpe Park. This is the world's first horror movie themed coaster and is one of the best theming jobs Merlin have ever done since they took over Thorpe. The entire Saw Plaza and queue line is fantastically themed, with even some props from the films making their way into the queue line. The indoor section of the queue is also very well done, with restricted lighting and screams of riders echoing throughout the building. Once you board the Gerstlauer Euro 5 trains, you'll set off on your journey into Jigsaw's track. If you sit on the second train to dispatch in each cycle, your vehicle will stop with the puppet himself giving a little pre-show, which is a nice little bonus. The first freefall drop comes once you turn a corner, which gives a great pop of ejector as you brush past some swinging axes. You then pass over by some air cannons that simulate arrows flying over your head before diving to the left into a hang-time-filled heartline roll over a body that squirts water up at riders. You're then blessed with the sunlight again as you look up to see the 100-foot vertical lift hill tower over you. If you climb this lift through, you can get a good sideways views of Thorpe Lake and even a quick glimpse of the entire park as you crest over the top. Very quickly, however, you'll plunge down the 100-foot, 100-degree drop. That is incredible. If you're unlucky though, this is where the ride experience will become very, very painful. As you come through the bottom of the Immelman, you'll start to be thrown around into those uncomfortable Gerstlauer restraints. There's actually a good inversion if you can survive it. You then fly into an overbank that brings you adjacent with Hyperia into an incredible ejector airtime hill that absolutely launches you out of your seat. A quick turnaround follows as you hit a block break that takes no speed off at all into an incredibly intense and painful dive loop before you hit the ride's brake run. Being a huge fan of the Saw franchise, I'm full of appreciation for the theming and the detail in this attraction. And if I can get lucky and get a good ride, it's a lot of fun. The problem is consistency, and more often than not recently it's been running poorly, which prevents this coaster from flying any higher on my list. That's it then, the first half of the ranking is done. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified when new uploads come out and when this video does come out on Friday. It will really mean a lot to me, and also share it with a friend as well. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.